Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Lindsay, a member of the CK-12 team. We're coming to you live from the world headquarters of the CK-12 Foundation here in beautiful Palo Alto, California. My colleague Katie and I will be running today's webinar, CK-12's FlexBook 2.0 platform. We're so glad you've joined us today.
Yes, welcome everyone. Many of you joining us today are participating in the CK-12 Certified Educator Program, so welcome back. If you're brand new to the Certified Educator Program and would like to learn more and officially register with us, you can visit ck12.org/certified and press register to get started.
We have recently revamped the CEP and have new streamlined requirements for 2020. To become certified, you'll watch 2 mandatory on-demand sessions. You'll then join us for 3 core live sessions, which you can attend at your convenience. This session counts as one of those 3 live requirements. Next, you'll complete the accompanying assignments for all sessions. Lastly, you'll complete a final form to request your certification, and then you'll be CK-12 certified. At the end of today's webinar, we can discuss more about the Certified Educator Program for any participants with questions, or you can type any questions in the Q&A window for Star or Katie to answer privately.
Before we get started, I do want to make sure everyone is comfortable with the Zoom webinar platform. You should see 2 different options on your Zoom screen. One is for Q&A and one is for chat. During today's presentation, whenever you have a question about CK-12, please post it in the Q&A window. That will help us track which questions we've answered and which ones we still need to cover. The chat window is a place for community conversation. It's great to see that starting already. We'd love for you all to introduce yourselves. If you're an educator, feel free to share where you live and the subject you teach. Just make sure in the chat window that you're sending any general posts to all panelists and attendees and not just to CK-12 or the panelists. So right now we've gotten some great posts that are directed just at us, but other people aren't seeing them. So make sure you choose that all panelists and attendees as you go.
Okay, getting to the topic at hand today. Today's session is going to cover all of the following. Navigating CK-12 to find FlexBooks and related content. From signing in to searching for books and resources, we'll make sure that you're comfortable exploring CK-12. We'll talk about the FlexBook 2.0 platform. This robust platform unifies CK-12 resources and delivers lessons in an interactive and engaging format. We'll discuss CK-12's adaptive practice system. Our intelligent system adapts to students by challenging them with harder questions or recommending resources. And then lastly, we'll talk about assignments and reports, how to assign a FlexBook 2.0 lesson or even some of the related modalities, and see student or class level reports.
I do want to mention that we have 2 resource pages you might find handy for this session. The first will help you get started with FlexBooks in the 2.0 platform. You can access it via the tiny URL, CK12 FlexBooks 2019. The second resource is on getting started with adaptive practice and assignments. You can view, download it, and save it at tinyurl.com/CK12practice2019. We'll put those links in the chat window right now, and you can find them in the CEP FlexBook as well.
Okay, I'm going to jump straight into a live demo of how to navigate CK-12 to find FlexBooks and related content. While I'm stealing the screen here, just one more reminder, again, lots of the messages are coming into just panelists. Please change it to a panelists and attendees so that everybody can see where you're joining us from and what you teach. Okay, real quick, I am here on the CK-12 website. You'll notice that I am currently signed in to a Jumpstart demo account. If you are not seeing that you have signed in to CK-12, you would want to either join or to sign in. You've got a couple of options here. Once you are signed in, if you've identified yourself as a teacher, you're going to see a home page that looks like this. If I scroll down, I can jump into content by subject. You'll see that we have math subjects here as early as grades 1 through 5 through middle school and high school math. We have science subjects. We have some subjects listed under social studies and more. And then we have some subjects by country. You'll find some translated content. And we have a few college FlexBooks as well. If you keep scrolling down the page, you'll find quick access to some of our browse pages. If you know that you're looking for, let's say, a simulation, you can jump in right here to a physics simulation. If you are looking for a FlexBook that has been contributed from another school or district, you can search schools to find a school near you that's developed content. There's also up at the top here, I like this top menu to use the Explore option, where if you know that you're looking for a specific area or resource, this is just another place that you can jump in and find that content. Everything from a FlexBook 2.0 to, again, here's another way to get to schools, adaptive practice, simulations, or PLIX. There's also some other resources here that you might find valuable. So take a little time exploring CK12 if you haven't already. If you are curious about what the student version looks like, when I press the switch to student version button, I'm taken to this page, and you'll notice that it looks a little different from how it's designed for teachers. We're sending students straight to the search bar here because we know that students are looking for answers and wanting to find things quickly. So we have this prominent search bar to get them into content, or they can jump straight into a course, any sort of subject FlexBook that they would like here with our science, our math, our social studies, and even some photography. So let me go back to the teacher version here. And we're going to be talking about our classes a little bit later on today. Your library is what's going to house any customized resources that you have. And then subjects is just going to jump us down to the middle section here. So I don't know, Katie, are we getting any questions into Q&A yet? I don't know. I wanted to make sure that people are just comfortable navigating. You'll notice that I press the CK12 icon quite a bit. That always takes me back to my home page. So lots of different ways to get to resources, but that was just a few of them.
We do have one question about accessing this as teachers. If students are logged in, the teacher page is really just kind of focused to help navigate as a teacher. We don't lock down curriculum in the same way that some other platforms do, because we do have students who access and learn on their own independent of classes. So as you assign work to students, you can create your own quizzes if you don't want them to have access to kind of our core platform and those answer pieces there. But when they are logged in as a student, then that's what allows them to turn in assignments to you, and then you can see their grades. So you do want to have students log in as themselves, but most of the difference between a platform is just a goal and intent of how you're accessing and using it.
Okay, I think we're going to jump back to the presentation again after that, just a super basic overview to start navigating and exploring resources.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. So over the last 12 years, CK12 has changed the world with the introduction of the digital textbook, which we call a FlexBook. And recently we've kind of converted that to our 2.0 platform. So we use the word platform now because what we offer is so much more than a textbook. Our platform uses the power of artificial intelligence and machine learning to enable a student's personalized journey. Every lesson can be a powerful mix of content, including different interactives, adaptive practice, videos, and so much more. Some lessons even offer inline questions to check for understanding during the lesson and give the students feedback on their answers as they are learning. This personalized learning system adapts to the needs and skills of each student.
Like Katie just said, a FlexBook is not your ordinary textbook. These books are tightly integrated with clear, focused, and engaging interactives. You can find user-contributed books on almost any subject imaginable on our site, but I want to highlight a few features of CK12's core offerings, our middle and high school math and science books. For any of our math teachers who are out there, we have books specifically designed for the Common Core that incorporate the latest in educational technology. These books include multimodal integrated resources to support the experiential Socratic spirit of the Common Core. But the instructive text and images, they offer formative assessment with immediate feedback. We help answer the age-old student question, will I ever use this? By grounding our questions and interactives in the real world. Then our science books, our CK12 interactive science flex books, are brimming with real world applications. Katie, I stumble on this every time. It's always, real world application is the hardest thing to say. but we're brimming with them, and students explore bigger thinking questions like, why do trips to Mars happen only during certain launch windows? How efficient is a wind turbine? And why do diamonds sparkle? All of our FlexBooks can include embedded videos that you've either created yourself or that you've curated, that you found on YouTube or Vimeo. You have the ability to add inline questions in your books for students to get immediate feedback. And then both our simulations and our PLIX that are interactives can be embedded right into any lesson. Lessons in the FlexBook 2.0 platform, they either can have an attached adaptive practice, or you could make a customized quiz. And I'm going to talk much more about adaptive practice here in a few minutes. One thing that you can't do with a printed textbook is instantly change the text to a different language. At the bottom of our site, you'll notice that there is a Google Translate button. That's going to allow you to change the text and menu options for a lesson to dozens of languages. This one was just changed into German, and you can see that all the menus and the lesson was changed into German. So this, I know, is very, very helpful for a lot of your classroom situations. Another thing I want to show you is that the toolbar for our FlexBook 2.0 platform has a section for notes and highlighting. When moving from a printed text to a digital text, students need the ability to highlight and annotate, and these are two things that they can still do on CK12. Any notes and highlights stay in the individual students' accounts so that they can refer to them and study them at any time. And then perhaps the most exciting thing about a FlexBook is your ability to customize and localize the content for your region and your students. Customizing a book can be as easy as just spending a few minutes changing a title and rearranging the scope and sequence. Or the process, of course, can be much more involved if you wanted to work with other teachers to systematically update a book to reflect your standards and represent your community. This is going to be the subject of an upcoming webinar, kind of the second in our CEP series that's called Customizing CK12 FlexBooks and Adaptive Practice. We're going to talk about it much more then. But do know that you have the ability to use any of our content as is, or you can even combine content from different books, or even create your own from scratch if you would like. All right, so let me go back to the site and show you how to find some FlexBooks. So here I am back on the main page. And like I said, there's a lot of different ways to get to content. I could use the search bar up here. I could scroll down to our subject branches. I'm going to click on the Explore menu option, and I'm going to browse the FlexBook 2.0 books that we have available. And here's just a little bit of information about our FlexBook 2.0 platform. And when I scroll down, you will see that we have several math books, our 6, 7, 8 math, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, Pre-Calc. We have our science FlexBook 2.0s. These are created by CK12, our earth science, life science, physical science, biology, chemistry, interactive physics. And then we're surfacing some other content that is from our partners at El Paso Independent School District. These are some of the content that they have created that we have surfaced on this landing page as well. But just to jump into a book to give you an idea of what these look like, I'm gonna select this interactive middle school math 6. And you can see that I'm taken to a little description of the book. Our math books also have a teacher edition that you might be interested in that's linked up here. These are books that were aligned to the Common Core, so you see that standards alignment. And I have some different options of what I can do with this book. I can add it to my library, which is kind of like adding it to a bookshelf or bookmarking it for later. I could start a customization process. If I pressed customize, that's where I would be able to make changes to the title of the book, the scope and sequence, or even the individual lessons. I can add it to a book that I've already started, or I could just share that book with my class. Notice that there is a URL up here. You can just copy and paste that URL, put it in your learning management system, and students could be using our middle school math 6 book in no time here. I want to show you though, I want to jump into a lesson. Let's see what's looking good. Let's go to unknown values. And when I click on a lesson from the table of contents, I'm taken to what we're calling the start page. And here we offer other ways to learn as well. And you'll get used to our symbols here. We have other related reads, other related lessons. These are some videos. And then this icon stands for Applix, which is one of our interactives. When I press the start button, now I'm in the lesson. And again, you're going to notice that this isn't just a textbook that's been converted into a digital PDF. This is so much more than that, where you have activities embedded in the lesson. So you're going to see things like try it. You're going to see inline questions that instantly give you feedback on how you're doing. Great job. I did well on that one. Hot spoiler, I'm going to miss that one. I can retry it. I can see a solution. We're engaging the students right away. There's the solution. It tells me what I missed and what the correct answer is. I can close out of that. Again, formative assessments as we go through this lesson. There are other interactives that I can try, more questions that I can answer. And if I keep scrolling down, you can kind of get the flavor of what our lessons look like. You are able, like I said, to use these lessons as is, or you could press customize and you can add some of your own videos into this. You could strip out any of the paragraphs or content or interactives that you don't like. You can add in your own state correlation standards down at the bottom. Lots of different options. Up here in the right-hand side, you'll see that I have access to our toolbar. And you're going to find a lot of interesting things in the toolbar. We're going to talk about insights in a minute. The related content takes you to the information that was on the start page. So I could jump into any of these related reads or videos or PLIX. Notes and highlighting. This is pretty cool. I'm able to highlight and annotate text, and it's going to appear right there. I have a link to resources where if you have some, say you have a PDF, you have an extension activity, you have an answer key you want to make available for students, you have the ability to add in resources right there. We'll talk about these action items here in a minute, but know that your toolbar is available. And then, of course, this view practice is super important that we'll be talking about in a minute. This is where the practice menu option comes up. And then also, I referenced it earlier, the select a language. I can change this into, we'll go French. And notice that this button just changed, all of the menus changed, and if I scroll up, the content has changed as well. So this could be a lifesaver for some of your maybe students who have joined your classroom, or we actually get the feedback that this is really helpful for parents as well. There's a lot of parents who English is not their first language, and that they're finally able to engage with their students on their homework thanks to the ability to just change into another language. Why don't I take a second? Katie, how are we doing on the Q&A?
Sure, we have a couple different questions that have come in. One that I think Star answered anyway, but I want to bring up was a question on, does this work on iPads and Chromebooks? Our site is device agnostic, so any tablet, Chromebook, laptop, desktop, it's totally available to use. It does get a little tricky doing some of our interactives on a phone just because the screen size is so small. You can still do the ones that are embedded in FlexBooks on a phone, but we do recommend kind of a tablet or bigger to get the full effect of those interactives. But yeah, you're welcome to access any of this content from there. We have a couple different questions about assignments and scores and sharing those pieces. So let me just hit a couple key pieces to start, and Lindsay's going to drill down onto that more. How do scores work? Some of them, it says progress, I get a score, and other times I get no score. So when you're assigning practice and quizzes, you get a score. When you're assigning something like an interactive or a video, there's just a complete or incomplete check mark. So that's kind of where you're seeing some of the difference in those pieces. Yeah. Yeah, and so then another piece is asking about the formative assessments shared. So I'm guessing you're talking about some of these inline questions that Lindsay was just referencing. These are simply a learning tool for students. At this point in time, that information is not available to your teacher. You as a teacher, just the scores from the attached practice or quiz. If you wanted some of these questions assigned separately as a quiz or to get a score report from students, then you could assign those separately if you make any of them, but they're not currently available. And then we have a really fun question that I always get as interesting in terms of, can I assign lessons without making the whole book available to the student? So if you're accessing a FlexBook that we've made and you assign a lesson, a student will get bumped into that lesson, and then they usually have the option to kind of navigate forward or backward and see that book. It can be a little bit different in some learning management systems, but within CK12 for Google Classroom, that's an option to get there. What you could do is you could customize that book and, let's say, only keep chapter 1. You could delete the other sections, and we'll talk about customization way more in the next webinar that we're offering. But then you would just share chapter 1 and assign those pieces, and then you'd add to that book another chapter, and then you could share those assignments. So you could kind of build out your own book and only share what you want, and then just keep adding to it as you go through. So that's one option to address that particular piece. So I think we've addressed one last question about content. So who owns the content that you have here? You are sharing it externally under our Creative Commons non-commercial license, and we have the rights to use that as well, but you retain ownership of that content, just like you would if you created it externally. But you can learn more in our terms of use if you want to learn about kind of how all those pieces work, both external creation, sharing, as well as to CK12. So I think before we jump back into this, we want to launch a poll and get a chance to get a sense of how you're feeling about just kind of navigating and finding content. Right now, we're gonna cover assignments, so don't worry about that piece, but just finding a FlexBook that you might think is useful, finding those related resources. Is this something that you've been doing for a while? So this is just a refresher for you. Maybe you learned a couple new little cool things. You're very comfortable. You think you can find that easily. Comfortable, you could probably go about and find that resources that you wanted or that FlexBook, or you still think you're just getting into this, maybe you joined late, maybe we didn't kind of cover exactly what you were looking for and you're gonna still need some support for that. So we will give you a chance, regardless of how new you are or not new, go ahead and answer that question and give us a sense of where we stand. So it looks like we have about 50% of you have read through and answered. And we're going to give you maybe another 10 or 15 seconds. Super comfortable, very comfortable, comfortable, or not comfortable to answer that piece. Okay, it looks like we're getting a variety of answers. Some of you guys are still brand new. We definitely will, I would say, if you still have questions as we go through. So we'll wrap that poll up now. And we will say most of them look like you guys were comfortable or very comfortable. A couple of you guys are still trying to figure out kind of where you stand. But definitely reach out to us if we don't answer your questions by the end of this. Stay on, ask more questions. Let us know how we can help you as we go through. So I think with that, I'm going to swap back to our keynote. And we are going to move into adaptive practice.
Okay, this is where things really start to get exciting because we're super proud of our adaptive practice system. We have over 150,000 questions that cover math, science, and even spelling. And so how our system works is that we offer questions at 3 levels that are going to adapt to the student performance. We also offer content when students struggle. And all of our adaptive practice questions, they can also be customizable into quizzes, which is covered in the second webinar on customizing CK12 FlexBooks and adaptive practice. I'm going to show you several ways to access adaptive practice, depending if you're using a FlexBook 2.0 lesson, or if you're just wanting to assign a standalone modality at ck12.org/practice. But first, let's talk about how it works. So, our system is set up to challenge questions, or to challenge students to answer 10 questions correctly. Students are going to see this message at the top of their practice. It says, get in the game, get 10 answers to complete your practice goal. Our system meets students where they are. With 3 levels of questions that are easy, medium, and hard, the system will match the student's level and will gradually increase or decrease difficulty depending on how students are performing. This means a student who is struggling may hit the goal of 10 correct with all easier questions, and a student who's more advanced would have more of a mix of levels. For teachers, this ensures that each student is progressively and appropriately challenged, while maintaining a clear record of each student's level of understanding. Having questions that adapt to students' needs is awesome, but CK12 takes it to the next level by making content recommendations in the moment. If a student is struggling, CK12 will intervene by recommending helpful resources like reads and videos. This is the magic to the system. If you're teaching in a situation like I did, where I would have 5 or 6 classes with about 30 students in each, it's very difficult to differentiate for all students in the moment. But our system is going to do the heavy lifting for you and ensure that students are being appropriately challenged and supported. All right, so let's take a look at the sample practice screen. This is one of my favorites. You guys can let me know where in the world you are that the French fries are $5.28 and the hot dog is $8.65. That better be a very big hot dog or have a lot of gourmet toppings on it. But the different parts of our adaptive practice system here, looking at the sample project or sample screen that's talking about adding and subtracting money. The first one, the progress bar, displays the number of questions answered correctly. You can see that our system has already set the goal of getting 10 correct. This is a system requirement. It can't be changed by the teacher or student. They're just always trying to get 10 questions correct. You can see the skill level meter that will increase or decrease based on the student's correct and incorrect answers. Here for number 3, we have all different types of questions that appear in practice. Some are multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blank, highlight, select all that apply. Images are also included in some questions when applicable. Hints are available at the bottom left during practice for most of our concepts. Sometimes the hints appear as text, and sometimes it can even be a short video. A scratch pad is also available for questions if students need to use their mouse or stylus or fingers and write on the screen to solve a problem. And then we have the option for improving this question. This gives users a chance to report an issue they might see with a question or answer to the CK12 staff. So those are kind of the different pieces of adaptive practice. When a student presses stop now on an adaptive practice, they will see this report. If you are a teacher who has assigned this practice to your student, you will have access to the same report when an assignment is turned in. You can see if the student met the goal of getting 10 correct, which would say 100%. Here you see that only 7 questions were completed and submitted. Other information includes the best streak and time spent. Note that we're in transition and this will be available in the new reports. Yeah, actually it's live. An extremely helpful indicator of a student's understanding of a concept is the skill meter, which will show student progress from beginning to mastery. If you want more information about the skill meter, you are able to click on the info icon or press learn more in the pop-up box to get to a help desk article. One other thing that you're going to see on the screen is that we have recommendations for how to continue exploring this concept. For instance, our intelligence system says that students who watch this video score an 87% or higher on the practice. So if you were to keep scrolling down this report, you would also be able to see each question, its easy, medium, hard label, and the exact answer that the student typed and selected. After viewing this report, students always have the option to keep practicing. They can start and stop at any time, and they can even continue beyond 10 correct. And I don't know that we actually mentioned, Katie, that this is all free. If you are new to CK12 Foundation, I do want to let you know that everything that we offer is absolutely free. You're not going to hit a paywall, be asked to enter in your credit card information. It is free, which compared to a lot of our competitors who have subscription models for their practice, that's a pretty awesome gift.
Yeah, we just had someone ask, if I'm logged in, does that mean I can use your FlexBooks? Yep, that's it. Some stuff you can access even without logging in, but we encourage you to log in so you can take advantage of the full platform. But that's just a simple email, and then you have access to all of it.
Okay, I'm going to show you a couple different places where you can access our adaptive practice. One of the first ones is going to be in a FlexBook lesson. So just to take you on that journey again, why don't I come down here this time to access, I will jump into physics. And when I selected physics, I'm immediately taken into the table of contents. And we will go with average velocity. And again, I got the start page that gives me some other ways to learn. When I press start, here is the lesson. We've got embedded simulations, which are awesome, a video. But down here in the lower right is the view practice. And it's going to give you an estimated time to complete. This is on a harder concept, so it's longer minutes. And since I'm just logged in as a teacher, all I can do is preview. But when I preview this practice, it takes you to the screen that I was showing you earlier, where 0 out of 10 correct right now. My skill level is to be determined, but I can start answering questions. You still get positive messages even if you miss some. I'm going to miss this question as well. Every mistake is an opportunity. I missed that one. So now I have a skill level that I'm in the red zone, which means that I'm at the very beginning level here. I got one right. So there's the 1 out of 10. If I keep missing questions, like I'm not doing very well here, our system, it just told me to slow down and pause and think about if I need to do something else to learn about velocity. So it is recommended that I do this lesson, this read on average velocity, that I interact with this simulation, or that I watch this video. So like I said, this is where if you're the teacher doing a million things, our system is going to offer content to help the students who are struggling. Of course, they can take us up on that, or they also have the option to return to practice. And this is just designed to be a practice system for students. So they can stop at any time. If they're doing some practice in class, they could stop for now. And then they could go home and they could do some after dinner. They could do some at their dentist office. If you had assigned this, they would be able to see the report that I showed you earlier. And we're going to talk about assignments and reports here in a minute. But anyway, all of the FlexBook 2.0's from CK-12 have a practice built into them in the lesson. I'm going to click on the CK-12 icon here and go back out. Another place that you can find practice is at ck12.org/practice, or from the Explore menu, Adaptive Practice. And if you're using something else as your main lesson for your students, and you're not using a FlexBook 2.0 environment for that content, you still have access to our adaptive practice browser. So I could come down to physics, and I forget where I was, somewhere in motion in one dimension. And I am able to, there's that velocity, I'm able to select a practice from our practice browser. And this took me to the option where I can start practicing. I can do one of these related modalities before I start. Since I'm signed in as a teacher, it's giving me the option to assign to class right here above the practice. I also have the option to download this as a worksheet. Of course, then it loses its adaptive element of going from easy to hard, hard to easy. But sometimes you just need a paper copy. You can do that. And then this customize button is what could make your adaptive practice questions a quiz. And that's a subject of another webinar. But once again, this is where I can start practicing and use the scratch pad to draw my angles. Hints are available for most all of our concepts. You can get more information on the skill level. Hopefully this is giving you guys some good ideas of how to use this with your students. This is not a very interesting report since I spent 19 seconds on this practice, but this is an example where a student would see this and you would see this as the teacher if you would assign this, that I got 0 correct, so I'm 0% of the way to my goal. It will tell you your best streak, it will tell you how long you spent, and it would give you a skill level if you'd actually answered something. And then when you scroll down, you'd be able to see the breakdown of the different types of questions. So I think that's several different ways to access adaptive practice. Coming back out to the home page, you can just assign adaptive practice through adaptive practice here. When you're signed in as a teacher, you can also browse the adaptive practice browse page here, where again, look by any subject. You can search by a specific concept. Lots of different ways to get it to your students. And here in a minute, I'm going to talk about what it looks like to assign these through either CK12 or through one of your learning management systems. So I'm sure we have some questions coming in about that. Katie, what else are people asking right now?
So we've answered most of the questions in the Q&A. It looks like there's a couple in chat. So please make sure if you have questions for us, you add them to Q&A, just so that we make sure that we get to them. I'm going to answer those 2 in chat. One asked about the we recommend, and is that for all students or some? So that shows up, that pop-up shows up in practice for students that are struggling. So as Lindsay showed, she was just kind of intentionally missing up questions to trigger that pop-up for students to kind of support them as they go through that piece. So definitely check that out. And then the other question had to do with functionality. So does it have to be an interactive book? So the practice is attached to any of our core lessons in this 2.0 environment that Lindsay's at. You can assign practice separately. If you're using one of our older books, the concept collection, for example, there's an orange button at the top of those lessons that would allow you to assign that matching practice for that piece for anything that's attached to a concept. Our oldest books aren't broken down at the concept level, so you'd want to kind of browse the practice Lindsay was sharing with you so you get a sense of what that looks like, and then you could assign that practice directly. But we really have tried to streamline our platform into the 2.0 world so that that assessment piece, that chance for students to practice, whether that's an attached quiz or practice, is really available right there, and you assign that together. So that's something to kind of keep in mind.
Actually, I don't think I showed this earlier, the searching in the search bar here. I just typed in water cycle. And you can tell that it is giving me the option to search all of CK12, or if I knew that I was looking for the water cycle as it applies to a certain subject like life sciences or earth sciences, it's serving up those options for me. But I'm going to search all of CK12 for the water cycle. And here's where I'm seeing search results. And so I would love for you guys to try this with something you're teaching in your classes coming up. Like I said, mainly middle school through high school math and science is where we have the bulk of our resources. We have all of the adaptive practice PLIX sims to go with those, but you can try searching some other areas, and don't forget to switch over to the community contributed tab, where you'll see individual users who have created something and uploaded it to the CK12 community as shared resources. But looking at the CK12 content here, I can search the concept page. If I click on this big box up at the top, this is where it's going to show me a lot of resources on the water cycle. Again, similar to that start page in a FlexBook 2.0 lesson, but for those of you who are just asking about other ways to assign things, I could just come to a lesson on the water cycle, and I could get this lesson in the hands of my students the same way that I can scroll down, and here is the practice for water cycle. And if I select that, I am able to assign this to my students. So there's lots of different ways to get to these resources depending on how you want to get them in the hands of your students. What other questions should we knock off right now?
So we had a question about adaptive practice in Spanish. In our subjects page, you'll see a link to Brazil, and they have some practice in Portuguese. We are doing some projects with some other people that might be creating questions in Spanish. Currently, that is not available at this, like, as I said, currently. If you are interested in that, you can talk to us and reach out to us. If Lindsay clicks on that Brazil page, you'll see that they've made some quizzes in Portuguese to align with the curriculum they built for elementary science. She just has to scroll down slightly and you'll see access to those quizzes. So we are looking into options to kind of make matching pieces. The Google Translate button isn't available on those pages because then the English answers wouldn't be correct if they were trying to write them in Spanish. So we want students to be successful. So it's not available yet. We're looking into options to see what that might look like down the road. And then the next question has to do with topics in science. So if you click on that Explore menu up at the top there, you can click on NGSS. And that aligns our concepts to the DCIs. So the disciplinary core ideas kind of as you go through, you can click on any particular set of standards on the left side for middle school and high school. Then it will pull up the standard that is listed at the top and then the concepts. So we map that way. There are other options for NGSS. And we definitely recommend that if you join the Certified Educator program, there's a section on using CK12 for NGSS within that FlexBook, and you can find a recording of a great conversation we had with other educators doing that this past summer. That we're gonna swap back over and continue on. Please feel free to keep asking questions in Q&A, and we're gonna talk about assignments since you guys have questions on that front.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, many of you are still exploring CK12 and getting a feel for all of our different resources. It is robust and there are lots of ways to access things. I'm hoping that you've already found some different resources that are going to go in your teacher toolkit and make your lives easier and help engage your students. That's awesome. But here's just a reminder of these are some of what we consider our assignable core modalities. Or when we say modalities, that just means different ways to learn. You can assign a read, which is the lesson, a video, a PLIX, a simulation, adaptive practice, and the dreaded phrase, real world application. While all of our resources have a unique URL that you can always copy and paste from the top, or you can use our green ShareOplane to share, assigning is a different thing. Assigning a modality will generate a report for the teachers and the students to view.
So if you're already in a school or district that uses Google Classroom, Canvas, or Schoology as your learning management system, we do easily integrate with those interfaces. So for Canvas and Schoology, you would link it on the back end, and then you can create assignments for CK12 from within those platforms. CK12 Classes is a great option for those of you not currently using an integrated learning management system. Definitely don't use both. Pick one or the other because it can get a little confusing for everyone if you're trying to do both. So if you're using a learning management system, go ahead and do that. If not, and you need a way to assign work to students, you're welcome to use our CK12 Classes. We do have a few learning management breakout sessions. They're in the archived webinars on our webinars page and also in the deep dives chapter of the CEP FlexBook. So definitely check those out because they explicitly show you how to assign work through Google Classroom, Canvas, and Schoology if you are using any of those. Across our site, you'll see options to share resources and to assign resources. Lindsay hinted at this idea. For example, within this FlexBook 2.0 lesson on continental drift, you have the options assign a class, share, and share to class. When you press the assign a class option, that allows you to assign to a CK12 class or to Google Classroom. As I said, Canvas and Schoology assignments are done from within those learning management systems. When you create an assignment, that means that students will see that assignment in their class and that their grades will be passed back to you as a teacher whenever they click the turn in button at the top of those lessons. If you press share with just that little arrow, that shares a link to the resource. You can either share it to Google Classroom or external to your social network or via an email, but that is not creating an assignment. You will get no grades attached to that. Similarly, if you click the last one, the share to class option, you can share to a CK12 class. For those of you in the Certified Educator program, you'll see that I've done that for the CEP FlexBook, and then it shows up as a resource in that class. So in summary, you're welcome to use the resources and that unique URL to share. You could always copy and paste that. You can use the green share applied or this little arrow share to share externally, or you can assign work to generate a report for teachers.
Thanks for explaining that. I think that's helpful. You just showed how to assign a lesson from a FlexBook 2.0, but I also want to show everyone how they can assign individual modalities as well, such as the PLIX and simulations, videos, and real-world applications, separate from a FlexBook. One option is to use that search bar that I showed you earlier at the top of the page, and you can type in any concept. And then in this case, this is the example on continental drift. You can click on that top concept page like I showed you, or you can use these filter options to the left to see a certain type of modality. So don't be afraid if you know that you're looking for a video, if you know that you really want to help your students with that real world application, you can use those filter checkboxes to help identify those. Another way to find individual modalities is to use that option at the bottom of the page. That's at the bottom of the home page, or these same options are available in that Explore menu up at the top of the page. And again, all these are going to get you to what you're looking for, hopefully.
So one other thing, we just created the option to access those from within a FlexBook. So if you're accessing these related modalities from that related content piece, you can also kick out and assign them that way. So definitely check out that new option.
Yes. When we are looking at a PLIX, this is a PLIX right now, you're going to see a big orange button at the top that says Assign to Class. That's where you do it for a PLIX, and then that's the same for how you do it for a simulation. There's also that top orange button at the top. If you are looking to assign a standalone read or a video or a real-world application, you're able to do that on the left menu, like this read on angles, or this video on earthquakes, or this real-world application called Keep Your Spit to Yourself. These are all assigned the same way, and they all report the same way. You can also view and assign practice from the box in the upper right-hand corner on these pages as well. So hopefully that helps with how to assign things. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. And I want to show you, we have a class in CK12 that we've already populated with some work thanks to some nice interns of ours. So let me go back out to the home page. I'm going to go to classes. And again, if you are using Google Classroom or Canvas or Schoology, then you would not want to create a CK12 class. But for some of you, CK12 classes are the best option as a way to manage the work. So I've got 27 classes here, which is quite a few. I'm going to jump into our summer 2019 class where we had some interns do some work for us. So when I select this class, you will notice if you use CK12 classes that you have the ability to share resources with your class. You have the ability to check out how many people are in that class. You can see that there are a couple of administrators, a couple of teachers, lots of students. You can choose to have a Q&A with that class. You can turn that on or off in the settings if you would like. But what I want to show you today relates to the assignments and to the reports. So you can see that in July 2019, we assigned a PLIX, a video, a quiz, a FlexBook 2.0 lessons. And if I wanted to see the progress that students completed on these assignments, and I go to reports, I get this beautiful heat map that shows me my students on the left side with this is their first name, last initial for privacy reasons. Up at the top, I have clear labels of this is a quiz, this is practice, this is a real world application, this is a Sims, a video. You can see that I'm either getting a percentage or I'm getting a check mark. Like we said, for things like a real world application, simulation, or PLIX, we're only able to tell you that a student opened that resource or engaged with that resource. But for our quizzes and our practice, you're able to get a percentage of how the student did. For practice, once again, let's see how Ryan did on this practice. He got 10 correct. His best streak was 7 in a row. He spent 5 minutes on this, and we've deemed him a master. He's done with this concept, ready to move on. If I scroll down, I can see that he was even answering lots of hard questions. 8 of those 11 questions were in the hard category. And I could scroll down and I could see exactly what Ryan missed. So I can select any cell here and tell that, okay, Joel, he had 3 correct, 11 minutes. He never made it to the hard questions. So while they both say that they got 100%, they're very different, because Joel did 10 out of 15 questions correctly, never got a hard question correct. And again, I could scroll down and I could see exactly how Joel answered on this practice. For quizzes, you can set up different parameters, and you can even allow students multiple attempts on the quizzes if you would like. But here it's Katie's going to talk about this in our next webinar on customizing this idea of making quizzes, and you just have more control. You can create a subset of questions from our 150,000 question bank to give to your students. A couple more things to note about this view is that if for some reason the color coding that we've used, the red and green, is something that you want to take off, you're welcome to just view it in plain mode. I think it's very handy to at a glance see, that Sean needs to receive a little attention to figure out why he hasn't done his assignments. There's also the ability to export these as a CSV file. So if you are using a CK-12 class and you need to export this data to upload into a different gradebook, the CSV file should make that easier for you. These reports, you can view the same heat level report in Google Classroom. You can also view it in Canvas. Let's see, what did I miss, Katie, on reports? Or anybody have any questions on that?
I think we have one big question, and this is super important, so I want to cover this live. It was about being able to see scores. So you can only see these scores if students have turned in their work. So that could be an orange button in some of our previous pieces, or the turn in button at the top of 2.0 lessons, which I think is teal to match that kind of newer color scheme. But you will start seeing, so for example, TB here or Brandon L here has not submitted their quiz or practice to you. They might have actually started their practice homework and just not clicked the turn in button. So until they submit that to you, you won't see that. Just like if they did their homework and didn't hand you a worksheet that they filled out, you wouldn't see that score. That allows them to kind of work their way through it before they submit the work. So you would be able to see kind of all the attempts as soon as they do make that submission. So since that's super important, I wanted to make sure to cover that piece.
Why don't you show them what's available right now for Insights? Because Insights is another, in addition to reports, we're also becoming more intelligent and more insightful at the lesson level as well.
Sure. So if you access a FlexBook 2.0 lesson, and you can do this from the assignment link, both within CK12 or any of our learning management systems. So for example, Schoology right now only allows you to get the grade, but the link to the assignment is available within that. So whatever that assignment link is, you can access and open that from within Google Classroom, from within a CK12 class, or from within Canvas or Schoology. And when you open that assignment, it kicks you into the 2.0 page. And on the top right, that toolbar, the first option there is Insights. And so this is an example from this fall where we had a couple kids go in and do some practice and kind of give me some different options. And you'll see here that Katie did well on this assignment, so she might have gotten all of those correct, or at least only a couple wrong there, had a good solid understanding of this concept, didn't need to take a ton of time to review this lesson, but you can see the time she spent within this lesson and even where she spent that time with the graph on the side. If I look at Ryan there, he is still exploring, took a little more time to kind of maybe use that lesson to understand what was happening, try to answer some questions, work his way through. Even if he finished his homework and submitted it for full credit at 100%, this helps you understand that he's still exploring that piece. So in addition to the report part, you could open a FlexBook 2.0 lesson and get these insights. So this is one of the big reasons we recommend you use 2.0 instead of the older environment. If you really like a book that's from that older environment, you can convert it to 2.0 and use it from there. The other piece that shows up within our science content right now that you should be aware of if you're a science teacher and you're using science content is that our questions that map directly to a paragraph or a set of like bulleted lists, in this case, this would be the whole paragraph, help both the student and the teacher see different parts that you might want to review. So as I said, Ryan was struggling a bit. So he has this like flashing teal dot right next to this particular bulleted list. And that's because he missed a particular question. If you click on that teal dot, you as a teacher or the student would both see this option. The student when they're in the lesson and you when you're in insights. And it says the majority of metals are blank, meaning they're capable of being stretched into a thin wire without becoming weaker or more brittle. That answer is found right within this lesson in the 4th bullet point. So that's a good check for both the student as they're working their way through to see where they might want to review content, and you as a teacher to kind of jump through those insights and say, oh, looks like a bunch of kids missed this paragraph. I want to make sure to cover that in my class. So those are the kind of major things for insights, and as we continue to build them out, we'll make those available to you, and so we recommend that 2.0 environment to get to see those.
Okay, I think that wraps up the bulk of what we were hoping to cover today as far as navigating, finding resources, getting familiar with adaptive practice, as well as this exciting insights that are being built on our site. So as we're approaching this hour mark, I think Katie's going to give some wrap-up information. So if you have any last questions, now's a great time to be putting them into the Q&A.
Great, so as we are talking about stuff, we didn't have any questions there, so we're gonna skip that Q&A for right now and jump into the upcoming webinars. Our next webinar is Wednesday, the 26th of February. It's on customizing both FlexBooks and practice. So we'll talk about converting FlexBooks from 1.0 to 2.0, combining FlexBooks, customizing them, starting from scratch, all those pieces, as well as taking adaptive practice and customizing it into a quiz. If you're not registered for that webinar, it's live on our webinars page, so feel free to go ahead and do that. And if you're in the Certified Educator program, that is the second of the 3 live webinars that you need to attend to become certified. The third one we will post shortly as well. We've talked about it a couple different times here, we highly encourage you to join us for our Certified Educator program. That gives you access to our FlexBook and all the extra resources there. It gives you access to a community of teachers, even and educators and admins and homeschool parents and all the rest, even outside this webinar's chat window. So go ahead and go to ck12.org/certified and register, and we'll get you set up in that class, which is live as we speak. We have a feedback form. This is the same feedback form for all of our webinars, so go ahead and feel free to use it. Just note which webinar you attended, so we have kind of a reference point to work. tinyurl.com CK12 feedback 1920 for this wonderful school year. And that just gives us a chance to see how we're doing, what we're doing well, what we can improve the next time we do this, especially for these 3 new webinars. They're brand new. We've reworked a lot of our program. So we'd love to hear any feedback that you guys have on this and what we can change as we move forward. So with that, we thank you for joining us today. We will continue to support you. Happy to help you at any time. Shoot us an email at jumpstart@ck12.org. And don't forget to let your social networks know about us and your participation in our program. We're on all the socials as CK12 Foundation, and you can hashtag CK12 certified as part of that program. So that's it for our core program. I think we have some questions in here, so maybe I'll kick it back and we'll see what we got.
I think Star just cleared out our Q&A. Couple questions about this webinar was recorded, and we'll have it posted on the ck12.org/webinars page probably by tomorrow afternoon. So within 24 hours, we'll have that. If you have any specific questions that weren't answered today about the Certified Educator program or anything else related to the site, jumpstart@ck12.org is a great place to answer that.
So we had one question asking about figuring out if you have been registered or not, or whether or not you can use this. If you're not registered already, your attendance still counts today. You don't have to do this webinar again after you register. If you were registered before yesterday, you got a welcome email for us with the current class, or you've already been working in a class this fall if you're kind of just wrapping up. But definitely check out that piece. We'll send that out to people who have more recently registered kind of periodically. That form now has in that confirmation screen direct access to that class. So make sure that you're in a class, or email us at Jumpstart if you're confused or trying to figure that piece out. And in terms of how do we record this, the Zoom platform does a great job giving us that attendance record, so you don't have to do anything. You just have to show up, and we will have a record accordingly. So I think with that, we're going to sign off. If you have any questions, email us, and we hope to have you join us at our next webinar later this month.